Hey everyone, how we doing here, guys? My name is Will, and I'm excited to talk some Celtics with you guys today. I hope you guys are doing well, and I'm excited to talk, some Celtics, some Red Sox today. We're gonna get into it because we got a lot of stuff to discuss on the live stream today. So I'm hoping first live, but hoping you guys can all hear me well. Um, but I'm really excited for you guys to come on here and I'm wearing my Jalen Brown jersey today. So, I'm honoring JB and just what he did for this city. But today I wanted to do this live because of the major trade that we're going to get into today. We're going to get into the Red Sox, how they've been doing recently, and we're going to get into a little bit of the Celtics draftees. So, welcome into the Boston Banner Breakdown podcast. This is my first live. I'm really excited to be here with you all. Thank you all for joining. We're all going to here. We're going to share the screen here so you guys can all see. But you know, I'm really excited. I want to hear you guys' comments and takes and about what you thought about the Jalen Brown trade yesterday. That was a tough one. Jalen Brown got traded um for Paul George and two first rounders, two second round picks, and that was tough. I kind of that was hard to lose JB, but I believe that we will get some news from Brad Stevens on Monday in his press conference. As you can see here from Adam Himmelsbach, we are going to he's going to meet with the media Monday, so we'll hear some news about the trade, but then also some breaking news on the pod here. We got Namias Keita. He re-signed for a new 4-year, $56 million extension. Just this morning, some breaking news with our center depth. We get re-signed Namias Keita. And just like Celtics Unite just said, I really 100% agree with this, that Mitch Robinson and Amish Keita are going to be two really good centers for the Boston Celtics this season. So if you look at the their stats, Namias Keita his issue was he just fouled a lot in the playoffs, which to me he was a really good starting center in the regular season. You can get by with Nami Ishikata, but as a postseason player, I didn't believe he would be able to be a reliable, consistent center in the playoffs. Because these games in the playoffs are more, everybody's playing their hardest. Everybody wants to win the finals. So he just wasn't able to stand up against the Joel Embiid. So that was tough, but you know, I think I really like um Mitch Robinson, who we got from the New York Knicks. He was really good for the Celtics, or for the Knicks, I should say. He was really good for the Knicks, and he won the NBA championship this past season. So, I mean, big fan of Mitch Robinson. But as we go on here, and we just get started with this live, we just got started just a few minutes ago. I'm really happy. You know, like I said, we got some breaking news with Namiya Cicada, 4-year, $56 million. So good center depth there. But I'm going to break down the contract for Mitch Robinson, who just signed, and we got Mike Connolly, veteran point guard from the Minnesota Timberwolves, who just signed in free agency as well. So in free agency, the C's have done. It's been quiet beyond the major trades, but as you can, I'll share the screen here so you guys can see. The Celtics and who we brought in this offseason. So we brought in Paul George, was our major trade. The reason I'm held up on Paul George is because of the fact that he's 6 years older than Jaylen Brown. But also, it's just been known that he's not as reliable as Jaylen Brown either, consistency wise, just due to his injuries. So I am not a big fan of losing JB, but I'll get into that in a few more minutes here. But if you look at the Tatum and Brown on-off numbers, according to Data Baller, Brown with Tatum off the court, I should say. With Tatum off, Brown averaged 121.3 points per game, or 121.3, which is 37.4% was his offensive rating. And his defense was 116.3. And their net rating for Brown when Tatum was off the court was +5. When Tatum and Brown were both on the court, it was 125.1. And the defense was 107.3. And the net rating was 17.9. With Tatum on and Brown off the court, this is what we're going to care about a lot with the Brown trade. Tatum was 124.0, which is and 120.5, which was +4.4 better defensively, with a 3.5 net rating. So that was in the regular season. And now if we compare to the postseason, with Tatum on and Brown off, Tatum on offense had 140, I should say, 0.2. And the defense was 124.7 with a 15.6 net rating. And I believe that if you look at the numbers with Brown on and Tatum off, they're even worse, which for Brad Stevens, that makes this move look really good because it's a 94.3 offensive rating compared to a 112.8 defensive rating, which is a negative 18.6 net rating. So as we all know, Tatum did get hurt last season, and he was able to come back and play in March. But yeah, I believe that the numbers that I just went through here on the on-off numbers show a lot about why, you know, this move isn't bad. It was, if we break the whole trade down, I'll pull it up for you guys here so you guys can see the whole trade. And as I pull it up, I'll let you guys know to please support the channel by listening to the podcast on Apple Podcast and Spotify. Really appreciate you all support of helping me out and listening each day. It means a lot to have your support. But here, as I pulled up the trade, right here, this is the trade we're talking about, right? Jaylen Brown to the Sixers for Paul George, 2 first-round picks, and 2 second-rounders. And I just was heartbroken when I see this first trade because I really like Jaylen Brown. I think he's a heck of an athlete. I'm a big fan of what he did in the community. He's been here for 9 years. We took him with the number 3 pick. And out of South Carolina, SoCal. He's really smart. So I, and a lot of fans, deservedly so, when this first trade dropped, a lot of us just are in shock, I think. And that's a good way to put it. But now, having a couple nights to sleep on it, process the trade, I think it was leaked by Shams Charania, who mentioned that Jaylen Brown was included potentially in the Giannis trade for 2 first-round picks. And I think after the season Jaylen Brown had, he didn't want to be included in Giannis because he thinks he's better than Giannis, which he's not, because Giannis is a top 3 talent in the league. But that's just the way Brown thinks, and that's just who he is. He had 28.7 points per He had 28.7 points per game, which was 4th in the league. 6.9 rebounds per game, which was 31st. And 5.1 assists per game. And shooting a 47.7 field goal percentage. In the postseason, he had 25.7 points per game. And that was in the 3-2 series loss to the Philadelphia 76ers. That was tough. I mean, especially now as you all see the trade, the team we lost to in the first round in our home garden in Game 7 was the Philadelphia 76ers. And now he gets traded to our rival, who we'll see many times next season. So, I mean, this isn't just, a team like a Portland or a team like LA that you see maybe once or twice in the season. We're going to see the Philadelphia Sixers at least 3 or 4 times in the regular season. I really hope that this is the Celtics season opener. I would love to get Jaylen Brown back. I think the crowd is going to be amazing. To get that standing ovation for Jaylen Brown. He won a championship in 2024. He was a Finals MVP, Eastern Conference Finals MVP. So a lot of accolades for Jaylen Brown. So I mean, it just is. It hurts, I would say, for Celtics fans to lose Jaylen Brown, but we got a couple first round picks back, two first round picks, and then two second rounders, as well as Paul George, as we're going to get into right now as well. We're going to get into Paul George's stats, who was really good in the series against us. He's a 9-time All-Star, 6-time NBA All-NBA. He won All Defensive Player 4 times, and he was the 2012-2013 Most Improved Player. In 2025-2026, he averaged 17.3 points per game for the Sixers, and his free throw shooting was 82% while shooting a 43.9 field goal percentage. If we just look at his last 5 games, right? So we can check out and see how he was doing. He scored 7 points against the Knicks in their last game of the season. And then he scored 15 in that series versus the Knicks in the second round. He scored, let's see here, he scored game 1, he scored 17 points. Game 2, he scored 19 points. Game 3, he scored 15. And then in the last game, he scored 7. So, I mean, it's not exactly what you would want to see, right, from Paul George. But, for me, it's especially now with he's going to be the number 2 right behind Jason Tatum. So, I mean, Paul George, he's had some really good years, but he hasn't been really reliable, so to speak. And that's what concerns me the most with bringing in. When he was on the road in 2026 this past season, he scored 18.4 points per game. But at home, he scored 16.3 points per game. His usage was on the road, it was 24%, and then it went down at home to 23.1%. So, I mean, if you want to look by each month, we could do that too. In November, he scored 14 points per game. His highest scoring month was March by scoring 24.3 points per game. His offensive rating in March was 117, which is his highest offensive rating month. And if you look at his total points per game, yet like I mentioned, he averaged 17.3 points per game. His plus minus, he was 3.8, and his true shooting percentage was 570. And he shot a 439 in field goal percentage, and his 3-point field goal percentage was 392. And we know Boston likes to shoot a lot of threes, so expect that to go up now that he's a member of the Boston Celtics. And if we look at his points, he scored against the let's look up how he did against the Oklahoma City Thunder, who were the best team in the West. Second best team in the West, I should say, besides San Antonio Spurs. He scored just 12 points against them with 3 rebounds. I really, looking at some of these numbers here for Paul George, it gets me a little bit concerned if we look at how he does with no days rest. That's his best because he scores 20.5 points per game. But with 2 days rest, he scores 18.3 points per game with 4 assists. And he averages he's best when he averages 30 to 39 minutes per game. His usage is 22.6, and his offensive rating is 114. Defensive rating 112, with a plus minus of 6.3. In his career as a starter, Paul George, his usage is 23.6%, with a plus minus of 3.8. So that's really good. That's a really solid usage for Paul George. And Paul George was drafted with the 10th pick, 10th overall, by the Indiana Pacers. So he's played for the Pacers, Oklahoma City Thunder, the Clippers, the Sixers, and now Boston. So it'll be his 4th team that he's played on. So, I mean, I'm a little bit concerned, with Paul George, just because of the fact that, he's played on 4 teams now, and that to me gets a little bit concerning. But so I mean, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about Paul George here coming in, as I stated with the numbers, but I do think he has the talent to replace Jaylen Brown, but he's going to be asked to do a lot more, because in Philadelphia, he had Tyrese Maxey, he had Joel Embiid, so he didn't have to be the number 2 option on this team. So being the number 2 option on the Boston Celtics, I think they're going to use him. And what I've heard from reports on social media is that I think he's going to come in for a couple of years, and he's on a 2-year deal. He's an unrestricted free agent after 2028, 2029. He's making $57 million this season, and then, which counts for 35% of the cap. And then next season, he'll account for 32.7% of the cap, while making $56 million. So, and then being an unrestricted free agent in 2028, 2029. So I believe that the Celtics are going to keep him for these next 2 years, but then potentially next offseason, we might try to swap him for a superstar that becomes available. But this starting 5, as you put this starting 5 out there, you got Peyton Pritchard, either starts to come off the bench. You got Mike Conley. He could start. You got Paul George, Jason Tatum, then Mitch Robinson. To me, that's a really good. Then shooting guard is Derek White. Sorry, I forgot to mention that. I love D. White, the Buffalo. So, I mean, to me, you look at, there's a lot of good teams, though, in the Eastern Conference that have gotten better. So it's, where does the Boston Celtics stand up currently with the rest of the Eastern Conference? And right now, that starting 5, I really like, the Orlando Magic starting 5. They got Franz Wagner, Desmond Bane, Paolo Banchero. And now they just signed Vucevic as their center. So I really like the Orlando Magic. I could see potentially being a top 3 seed. So I might, I personally probably would put the Orlando Magic ahead of the Boston Celtics right now with their roster. And they got a new coach as well, Sean Sweeney. So I really like the Magic, what they're doing, coming into next season. Just if they stay healthy, that team's going to make a deep run in the playoffs. So look out for the Orlando Magic as a threat to the Boston Celtics. Then you also got the Knicks. We're coming back with Jalen Brunson, Cat, and Mikal Bridges as well with the Knicks. So to me, where the Boston Celtics stand, probably a top 4 team in the East if everything breaks right for us. But then, like I said, you got to look at Philly too. That team got VJ Edgecombe, Paul. I was gonna say Paul George, but you got VJ Edgecombe, you got Joel Embiid, Jaylen Brown, and then Tyrese Maxey. That's a strong core four right there. For the Philadelphia 76ers. So I'm definitely, concerned with Philly. I definitely want to hear you guys are all takes that are watching. Hear your comments, comment down what you guys think where the Boston Celtics are at right now. I think the Celtics are a top 4 team in the East. I still think we can, if we did what we did last season with Tatum out due to his ACL injury, or Achilles, I should say, rather. He tore his Achilles against the Knicks last season. So, yes, I would definitely want to hear what you guys have to say about where you think the Celtics, after the Jaylen Brown trade for Paul George. I also like the first round picks. We got a 2028 first round pick, Boston swap with Philly, and a 2031 rather first round pick, which is unprotected from Philly, a 2028 second rounder, which is favorable of Golden State, Oklahoma, or Milwaukee, and a 2030 second round pick, which is favorable of Washington, Portland, and Phoenix. So, I mean, our second rounders are pretty good second round picks, maybe early second rounders. We are hoping that you can, but it's with the picks, what made the JB and the JT era so special is that you hit on 2 elite wings, and NBA teams have been dying, really, literally, for 2 wings like a Jaylen Brown and a Jason Tatum that can coexist together and be top 10 talents in the league. And when Brown didn't have his best shooting night, Tatum would step up and be there and put up 20, either 20 to 30 points per game, 10 boards, 8 assists. Or Brown would step up if Tatum just couldn't put the ball in the ocean. He just was awful for whatever reason. Brown would be able to give you that 20, 25 points per game that you're missing when Tatum's off on those nights, or he's just resting, which that's going to be a key thing as well for the Celtics. Brown's going to rest. I should say that Tatum is going to be the one that's going to need a decent amount of rest this season, coming off of that Achilles injury. So you got to manage his minutes, but you also got to manage, like I said, Paul George's minutes. So I'm definitely interested to see how they manage Paul George and Jaylen Brown's minutes per se, but So I'm looking up right now to see how many games played in the last 2 seasons George averaged. And over the last two games, Paul George just played 78 out of a possible 164 regular season games. In 2024 and 25, he played in just 41 games while averaging 16.2 points, 5.3 rebounds, and 4.3 assists per game. In 2025, 2026, then he averaged 17.3, which is a lot lower than Jaylen Brown. And if we compare that to how many games Jaylen Brown played over the last two seasons, that is going to be much higher because he's more consistent and more reliable. Even last year, everybody was counting the Celtics out because they thought we were going to tank with Tatum being hurt for most of the year. All right, the numbers for Jaylen Brown. In 2024, 2025, he played 63 games. In last season, he played 71 games, which adds up to a total of 134 games or 81.7%. Let me that just sink in. 81.7% compared to 47.6 for Paul George. That is why I get concerned here, Celtics fans. The injury history. Paul George, next season, to be an Eastern Conference contender, we need him to stay healthy. That's the big thing that everybody says, health. And he's 6 years older, which also shows the big gap between the games played and the stats per game. Brown averages more points per game and averages more games played. So that's why I'm very upset by this trade. A lot of Celtics fans were hoping that when Jaylen Brown was included in the Celtics trade that it wouldn't be as much, right? The cost wouldn't be that much. But yeah, so I definitely want to hear you guys comments. Let me know what you guys think. But keep coming on and keep joining as we go through here and discuss the major trade. I'm still, like I said, I think, I'm definitely really surprised by the trade. I thought I really believe that I said I totally thought that this was the right move for the Celtics at the end of the day, just because it had to happen. And if Brown didn't want to be here, then I wouldn't want Jaylen Brown to be in a situation that he's not happy. See if you guys can see me better now. Thanks. Sorry about that, guys. I was kind of in the dark there for a while. But, yeah, so I'm wearing my Jaylen Brown jerseys. You guys can see I'm wearing my Jaylen Brown 7 supporting JB today. Celtics hat. Hoping you guys are all coming on here and, enjoying the live stream. But yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm I'm a little bit upset about that. To me, it's more so how does this trade affect the Celtics moving forward? You might ask. And we can watch some JB highlights together. for sure. Um, you know, in we can also now I'm also going to if we look at some JB, I should say rather, right, highlights together. You know, come on here and we're going to discuss the JB trade, which is what we've been doing for the past 30 minutes. If you are just joining, you know, it's heartbreaking, right? To see a guy who you just drafted in, and then he got traded to Philly. So I mean, I'm definitely really upset, right? But so Jaylen Brown, if you look at what he's done in his career, he's a five-time All-Star. He's a 2024 NBA champion, 2016-17 All-Rookie Team, 2023-24 Finals MVP, 2023-2024 Eastern Conference Finals MVP, which I said. So he got drafted in the 2016 NBA draft, third overall. And then the following draft is when we drafted Jason Tatum, 2017 draft, number 3 overall. And we got those picks from the Paul George and Kevin Garnett trade. Man, that felt a long time ago, huh, guys? Man, I feel like an old dude talking about this. Come on, man. You know, I'm oldie, but all jokes aside, Jaylen Brown. I'll even pull up the stats for you guys here. As we go through the stats, go through his splits. Show as I'll pull up the stats page for you guys to see that right now. And this is more therapy for me, I guess, at this point, because it is what it is. But so in the TD guard, Brown averaged 27.9 points per game. Before the All-Star break, he was averaging 29.3 points per game. Even after the All-Star break, he kept that up, scoring 27.4 points per game. And Jaylen Brown was just ridiculous. He was one of the players Celtics have had in a long time. And his shoot usage percentage was 36%, which makes sense because he was the go-to guy with Tatum out last season. His three-point per shooting was 347, field goal percentage 477. That's really good. True shooting percentage 571 at home, and then on the road 575, which is really good to come into an opponent's arena and still shoot the ball really well. Then at TD Garden, he averaged about 4.9 assists per game while playing 34.1 minutes per game at home. Then on the road, about 34.7. It's about the same minutes per game at home and on the road, which is something you really like to see with your superstar player. So I really like, the stats here behind Jaylen Brown, what he's been able to do his entire career. And if his minutes he averages actually, when he plays plus minutes, he averages 31 points per game, which is really impressive. That is, to play that many minutes and score that much while getting 7.5 assists and getting 8.5 boards. Like, that to me is very good. So now you look at the trade as a whole, and obviously this is a trade that, as look at the just look at the numbers. The numbers speak for itself. The Celtics lost this trade. I'm sorry to say it, but it's just how it is. The Celtics have lost this trade. Welcome into the people that have joined recently. Thank you for coming on and thank you for tuning in. If you look at the numbers for JB, it's pretty straightforward. Jaylen Brown is the better player than Paul George. The numbers speak for itself. Um, I know that Paul George should have a really scary injury when he was in Indiana with the Pacers, but still, I mean the numbers. You just look at his like Jaylen Brown is one of the best players, but I think at the end of the day that the numbers are why he said, "Hey, Brad Stevens, our GM." If you look at the numbers here, as I went through them this past season, at home and on the road, 27.9 points per game, 29.6 on the road. Like usage rate is really high, 35.7 and 36.8. That's where you want plus minus 9 at home, the plus minus of 3.8. So that's a little bit down on the road, but still pretty decent. But the minutes per game he played, really reliable each game. So, I mean, if you look at start of the month, yeah, it was pretty consistent 32, 33 minutes per game, 35, 35, 33. 35. So you'd averaged about the least minutes per game with 32.5 in October last season. So, I mean, he averaged over 30 minutes a game, right? And if we go look at Paul George, we'll go and see that his minutes were going to be way down, which is why I really believe that, the Celtics lost this trade. Yes, we got back a couple picks, but still. So if we look at the minutes he played, 23, 31, and he was suspended as well for PED use. That's why he didn't play as many games at the end of the year. So, yeah, 23 minutes in November, December, 31, 32, 32, and 30. So he's not averaging as many minutes per game as Jaylen Brown did, as we just went through. So, his points are way down, I would say as well. 14, 17, 15.8. Then his highest number was March, 24.3 points, 7 boards, 2 assists. So I mean, if he plays about 30, 39 minutes, he averages about 18.7, which is okay. But Brown definitely gives you that higher spike in volume. So the numbers, as I went through here, speak for itself. In the contract for Paul George is pretty massive for a guy who, is inconsistent to stay healthy. Next season, he's going to take up like I mentioned, 35% of the cap. And then 27, 20 to 28, if he's still on the Celtics, he's going to take up 32.10%, which is about 3% less of the cap. But still, it's still a large portion of the cap that he's going to be taking up. So, all in all, a really bad trade for the Boston Celtics here. My take, I really don't, I'm not a big fan of it. If I'm the Celtics, I would much rather, to go out and get, like a VJ Edgecombe from the Philadelphia 76ers or someone like that. But, it is who it is. But, to me, it's just the way this, he wasn't valued by the league. We're going to watch some Celtics highlights together. That's coming up next. If you all are still on the live stream, thank you for hanging in here for a while. And discussing the Jaylen Brown trade. No, we got kind of off to a rocky start, but a trade like this doesn't happen that often. But then, so now we can discuss Mitch Robinson, who we signed. He's going to be signed for a 3-year deal. He's only taken up 9.1% of the cap, about $15 million, I should say. Then his highest he's going to make is 16 mil in 2028, 2029. So 3-year deal, not bad. So a 3-year deal, but in total, $47.4 million. And we needed a center, right? Because that was the area we lacked in the playoffs. So I'm really excited about bringing in Mitch Robinson. Mitch Robinson, he's really good center. I really like him, what he's done for the Knicks. He's been really good. He's been just really consistent, I would say, as a center. I think that pick and roll game with Tatum and Mitch Robinson could be really good. I would say his minutes, in at home, you know, for the Knicks were 19.1 minutes or 20 minutes per game. So not great. 6 points per game, 8 boards, and 0.8 assists. Not really much assists, but usage rate was 10.7, so a very low usage rate. True shooting percentage is really solid though, 676. Field goal percentage 723, really solid field goal percentage. In total, he had 340 points last season, which is decent. And he his usage when he played 30 to 39 minutes per game was 18.4, which is his highest, which is solid. Field goal percentage also then, like as you see, a 600, which is pretty good. So I'm really liking Mitch Robinson as we go through his stats here. Big fan favorite on the stats. So as we go through his stats, his best month I would say here was January, when he averaged 21 minutes per game, which is solid. But April he was really good as well too. 20.4 minutes, 10.47 points per game. And to me, this is what I believe Mitch can do for Boston is right here in April, right? He's had 824 field goal percentage and a true shooting percentage of 815 and had 10 rebounds per game. So I want to see Mitch Robinson come in here and have a double-double. That's 10 points or in 10 boards every single game. If not every game, then every other game for sure. So, because I believe that's a talent Mitch Robinson can have on this Boston Celtics team. He's going to get the ball and kick it out to a shooter or get the ball and be able to feast down low. So I'm really excited to see this pick and roll game with Mitch Robinson. He was our big key free agent signing this past season. And then we also brought in Mike Conley as well, just on a 1-year deal, $2 million, which only takes up 1.5% of the cap. So it's not that expensive, for Mike Conley to come in here as a veteran point guard. I'm really glad he came to Boston as a guy who can be that veteran leadership. So we've the Celtics have made some moves here, and as I mentioned, we got Keita earlier today. That was the re-signing of Neemias Queta for another, in total, 4 years, $56 million. I don't really like Neemias Queta come back. So we're kind of up against it on the cap wise. So I don't, really prospect another move coming for the Boston Celtics. But, if we do, great. If we don't, then that's okay too. So I really think we're really up against it, on the cap. So, I'm kind of, if you guys are all still tuning in, right? We're discussing the Paul George trade going on about 15 minutes. thank you guys for all tuning in and checking out, my first YouTube live. Really appreciate you all being here and supporting me through this. It means a lot to have, you guys out there supporting me and, being able to support this podcast. Because I'm going to be doing YouTube lives here once every few weeks. The pod will be coming out soon, so be tuned for that as well. But yeah, so thank you all for tuning in to this live stream, and so my recap is that I really think that as we went through the numbers, that Jaylen Brown is more reliable. He averages more points per game. He's really more consistent than Paul George. So, at the end of the day, it just doesn't make sense for me to make that trade. It must have been, um, someone from up top above Brad Stevens that really pushed for this trade to happen. But so I really believe that, it wasn't, the way the Jays wanted to end it, but you know, it it is what it is, right? Like every time it comes to an end, and I'm gonna end on the emotional piece of the trade. He was a big key factor for the Seven Juice Foundation here in Boston. He'll always be remembered, for winning the finals in 2024 with that great Celtics team. So, you know, it's really heartbreaking to lose a player like that. It's gonna, take Boston Celtics fans a while to comprehend it and, overcome it. But, as we look at the stats, like I said, the numbers back it up for himself. That Paul George, he's going to have to really reinvent himself coming to Boston here for the Celtics organization. You look at legendary players like Paul Pierce and Kem Garnett and Ray Allen who have played here, Rajon Rondo, Larry Bird. The list goes on and on. So, he's really going to have to join Tatum. Bill Russell, like the list goes on and on of how many greats have played in TD Garden, worn a Celtics uniform. Paul Pierce, one of the greats of all time that wore a Celtics uniform. And, can Paul George step up for whether he's here for just 1 year or 2 years and, know what it's like to be a Boston Celtic and what, being a Celtic in the community means. Jaylen Brown definitely knew that. He definitely, experienced that for himself. He knows what it's like to be a Boston Celtic. So, yeah, man. It to me, it is what it is, right? Like I'm definitely heartbreaking by this trade. It's gonna hurt for a while. But yeah, so I'm definitely going to sit on this for a while. And to me, I'm just, it's heartbreaking, right? To lose a player like Paul George. And, I'm going to, as, those of you that are all still hanging on here, right? And still, I really appreciate it going into 15 minutes of this live stream. Means a lot that you guys are here and supporting me and in this journey of doing this podcast. So thank you all. It means a lot to have, really reliable fans and family that are out there. So thank you all for tuning in. But as I mentioned, right, like it just, if you look at the numbers, like we went through them just now, it just, the 2 first-round picks are nice, but you have to hit on them just the exact way that the Boston Celtics hit on Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum in the 2017 and 2016 NBA draft. And that is very hard because also the lottery has to go your way, which it did with the picks. So everything has to line up, right, in a way that sets the Celtics up for success. And for me, as a Boston Celtics point of view, that's asking a lot again to have history repeat itself to do well in a lottery. But while maintaining a championship level of success. To me, the reason you have to still be a contender right now is because of the fact you have Jason Tatum on your team still, and you have Derek White, and you have Mitch Robinson. So should still be a contending team. And the Boston Celtics environment and franchise is built around championships. You have the most championships in the league, 17, better than the Lakers recently, actually 18, with the 2024 championship. So we have been to many NBA championships. Also, they called the Eastern Conference Finals the Celtics Invitational for a few years in a row because of the fact that Celtics have just been there, and we're just waiting for whoever shows up to play us in the Eastern Conference Finals. But now, the East has gotten better. Like I said, Orlando. If you look at Paulo Banchero and that Magic team, look at their depth, right? They're making moves. They made a move last offseason to go and get Desmond Bane for the Memphis Grizzlies. That was a good move for them. And he was a lead for them. So I really like Desmond Bane. So to me, right? As you see, I'm a big Celtics fan and supporting JB on my first live, but still, it's just I just as we hit an hour here, it just as I reiterate, I don't think this trade was enough to get back for Jaylen Brown, but I think that it was just the fact that he didn't want to be here anymore, and the fact that we haven't heard really anything from Jason Tatum either. A few people reached out to him from the younger guys. Ron Hopper Jr., who was a younger player on the Celtics, have reached out to Jaylen Brown and said that they're going to really miss him. But so yeah, that's also kind of interesting for me as well. I've been just a little bit, perplexed about that a little bit, but because they've been running mates for the last 9 years. So, I think it just, and Jaylen Brown kept reiterating on his Twitch live stream that this was his favorite season. And that was without Jaylen Brown, or I should say Jason Tatum. That was without Jason Tatum. Jaylen Brown was the 1A, and he was leading the charge to the Boston Celtics as the go-to guy. So, I think to me, I'm pretty, it was a really shocking trade to have happened this week. So that's kind of the trade that happened with the Boston Celtics. Like I said, and then we got Mitch Robinson from the New York Knicks. So I'm excited to see what he does in Boston. I'll let you guys know what number he wears. We don't know that yet, but numbers are pretty good. Like I said, if he can average double-double a game for the Boston Celtics, I'll be more than happy with that. So, I'm really pleased with, at the end of the day, this starting five, it's pretty good. Not great, but, now as you guys join me here, we're going to do an in-depth dive on data ball to really break down Paul George and really examine, right, just how good of a basketball player. Well, he's heck of a basketball player, I'll say that. But we're going to break down Paul George's stats on Data Ball, our website, and I'll pull that up for you guys right now so you guys can see it. And as we hit an hour, thank you guys for all staying on here with me and enjoying this live stream. This is going to be the last part we do for you guys. but we're going to break down the stats for Paul George. And as you see, Paul George, he averaged 30.7 minutes per game. Some of these numbers are just okay, right? I mean, Paul George, they're really decent numbers. I'll say that. But but something that Brad Stevens reiterated was he wanted players, but that was the big difference between Paul George's game and Jaylen Brown's game is that Paul George, and I could pull up Jaylen Brown's numbers as well here as we go through it. When we look at the rim shots, he averaged 5.2, which is in the 85th percentile. Well, Paul George just averaged 2.2 rim shots, which is in the 23rd percentile. So much lower that Paul George would get to the rim every single game. The 3 points attempted are a bit higher for Paul George at 8.2 compared to 6.2 for Jaylen Brown. So, I mean, the net rating on the court, Jaylen Brown, I should say, was 6.8. And his on-off was negative 5.5. So, because of the better team Paul George had around him, he had a better on-off number. So it really is telling. In the on-ball percentage is higher for Jaylen Brown, as I said, just because Tatum was out most of the year. He had most of the major responsibilities, so that's why his usage was up and why his on-ball is really high. And he averaged 31.2, as mentioned, points per game. Low turnovers. Jaylen Brown has less turnovers than Paul George. So looking at the numbers here, Paul George had a better 3-point percentage at 39.2%, which is exactly what Joe Mazzulla likes. She's a 3-point fanatic. I don't know. Don't ask me about it. But, And then the free throw was 82%. Well, Brown, 79.5%. That's okay. In the 54th percentile. So, I mean, I'm going to go over these as well on the pod. But still, it's just, it's just really, you can tell, the numbers are really, to me, when you're not hitting your 3-point shots, which is something the Celtics have done majority of the season, you're asking yourself, how are we going to get points? Or if Tatum's struggling, how are we going to get points? And that's my biggest concern with this trade is that Brown was the one who would get to the rim, and do these, have these historical moments. So, I'm a little bit concerned with that, but yeah, so it is what it is, as we look through the stats here. Thank you all for joining. Hopefully many people come on here as well and join. But if you look at the stats, per se, right, it's, the 3 points attempted. Brown had a little bit less than Paul George, but, it just, true shooting for Paul George was 57%. So, I mean, to me, that's kind of, that's kind of shocking a little bit. So, I mean, it's tough, to lose a player like that. But, we'll go through the shot quality for Paul George too as well. We're gonna pull that up for you guys right now. So you guys can see, and this is the real in-depth. You want to be a basketball statistician, boys? This and girls, this is getting in the dirt. You're getting dirty. This is the in-depth behind basketball. This is where we get really, in depth with some of the stats. So now we're gonna, get deep and dirty here, with the stats, so to speak. We're getting in depth. So, as we start, I'll say that the on ball for him last season, Paul George, as you can see, his on ball was 20%, which was an 83rd percentile. The points created for Paul George, 25.7% in the 78th percentile. The rim assists were 1.7, 89th percentile. The 2-point percentage is only 48.4%, which to me that would be major. That would be higher with Jaylen Brown because he got to the rim higher than Paul George, which is only in the 16th percentile. That's really low. That's not what you want to see. If you look at the offensive rebounding for Paul George, just 0.5, 16th percentile. The defensive rebounding, a bit better, 4.8, 81st percentile. The blocks aren't great, 0.4 in the 63rd percentile for Philly. If you look at the playoffs, we'll go and check out his playoff stats for you guys. His true shooting in the playoffs was 60.1%, 79th percentile. So that's okay, and that's acceptable for me, given on the team he was on with Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid. So that's okay, given the team he was on. 3-point percentage, in the playoffs was 49.3 percentage in the 90th percentile. That's really good. And that's what I like to see. We'll check out his his offensive rebounding is 0.58 percentile, so that's really low. Doesn't really offensive rebound that much. His defensive rebounding 3.4, 53rd percentile, so average. So I mean, we definitely need Jets where JB would be more, rebounding per se. We can go check his on-off stats here briefly in the playoffs. His net efficiency on off was plus 4.7 in the 82nd percentile, so that's pretty decent. I like it. His true shooting, this is the more in-depth true shooting percentage. Is 620%. He in the 90th percentile, so that's pretty good for the playoffs. I really like that. And then the spacing. Let's see. Let's first to the back, guys. Sorry about that. Let's go the creation true shooting percentage. That's how many. What this is can he create his own shots, and what's his percentage when he does that? And that's 64%, which is the 97th percentile. So that's really good. So he can create his own shots. And then then as we get more in depth here, we can see the 3-point rate is 0.5, which was 61st percentile, so not great in the playoffs. His finish, which is cutting, rolling, either putting backs at the rim. So you can see that's at the rim, finishing close to the rim. So his finishing in the playoffs was plus 4.7, which is pretty decent, 74th percentile. So that's I would say, you'd want that to be a little bit higher for Paul George. Let's see, what else we can check out here, boys and girls. We can just some of these stats really are just really shocking to me. Paul George, and the guy would give up for him. As you get more in depth, I didn't realize just how maybe not significant, but just how much beyond just a 3-point shooter. That Paul George, he's gonna just need to, then we can check out his transition when he's on the break, either a dunk or steps out for a 3 on transition breakaways. We can check this out: the true shooter percentage when it's on a transition breakaway. he's 76.4%, which is in the 97th percentile. So I mean, that's pretty good. That I really like that he can on when we stop a team from scoring, get up, Tim gets a board, he can just kick it out to Paul George, and he'll be able to get low and make a really elite shot in the playoffs. So that I really like. But the big thing to me is defense, right? Because that at the end of the day, defense wins championships. Everybody says that now. So we're gonna check out his defensive rebounding percentage, which was 8.5% in the 13th percentile in the playoffs. So that's okay. That's not great. To me, that's not what you want to see from Paul George. But, so I mean, just a bit shocking, to see what, he just the numbers, behind Paul George. And we can check out, right, we'll go out and check out Paul George's last 5 games, right? Let's do that. So Paul George, his first last 5 games, his was only 14.2%, which went down 3.2 percentage or points, I should say, compared to his first 44 games. So I mean, to me, so we can keep doing this over the last like 5, 6, 7, we'll check out the last 10 games, um, to get a bigger number. So his first 39, he averaged 17.3 points per game, and then the last 10, that he played in the playoffs in the regular season, he averaged 16.3. So just -1 went down, 1%, or I should say, 1. The assists went down as well. True shooting went up though, which is pretty good, 58.7%. So that went up. The minutes per game were increased, 5.9 minutes per game. So that's really good. The blocks went up, but turnovers, that you cannot have that happen in the playoffs. We've seen the Celtics do that many times over in the playoffs, and that's kind of cost them series and wins. So his turnovers went up by 0.3 over his last 10 in going into the regular season and postseason. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. His 2-point percentage was up and down, as you can see, but 2-point percentage was 41.5%, was 3-point percentage was 49.3%, which went up. So I believe he's not going to do as much 2-point shooting in the Boston Celtics. To be definitely relying on that 3 a lot, which gives me a little bit of pause. But so yeah, I mean, definitely concerning, but it really is. I mean, it is what it is. This trade is what it is. But his last 10 games, right? It's just plus minus is minus 5.7, which is it's a little bit concerning. Not many blocks, 0.5, which is he hasn't really known for blocks, but and only a couple turnover volume is 2, so that's pretty decent, not pretty good. So I like that, but so I mean, I'm definitely concerned, definitely just about some of these numbers with Paul George. But I mean, to me, it is what it is. We made the trade, and I'll pull it up for you guys here too, so you guys can see it. It just is tough, because I mean that series against the Knicks, he had 7 points, 15, 19, 17, as I mentioned before. Just true shooting, 50%, 41.7%, 51, and 74. So I mean, he can do well in the playoffs, but sometimes he can also disappear. So I just, but that will say that I'm hoping that we can, that he can just be better, you know. And this is the free agency tracker I'm pulling up for you guys here, so you guys can see for yourself. Uh, Never mind. I didn't know that would not flow, so my bad. But but yeah. So I mean, as you just in general, man, just going back on that trade, that it's really big and shocking, but so that's definitely one of the big that was the biggest trade we made, earlier this week. And yeah, so I want to, if you guys are all still watching now, 15 minutes in, I really applaud you guys for tuning in and watching this for a while. I think that's where I'm going to cut it for you guys all. But yeah, man. So I mean, I can also, briefly, before I head out here, guys, got some, BC work to do, college work. Not fun, right, guys? But let's see. I'm going to, I'm going to leave you guys with this: is that what do you guys think of the Paul George trade? We, as I mentioned, we got Mitch Robinson and then Mike Conley, who's just depth piece. He was on the Minnesota Timberwolves last season, mostly just as depth guard. So I definitely just want to hear your takes on that. And whether you think the Celtics can be a top four seed in the East. Um, in how we're looking, right? So that was the big trade we made. We got Mitch Robinson, and then quickly, I'll let you guys know who we drafted in the NBA draft. We drafted Chris Sanak um, in the draft this past week. Then we also drafted who else we drafted? Then we drafted um, Chris Sanak with a first round 27th pick out of Houston, and then we drafted Dylan Mitchell, second round pick 40 from St. John's. So we can Chris Sanak. We can briefly go through his numbers in Houston. How he did was, his numbers. He averaged 485 field goal percentage, which is pretty good at Houston. Averaged about 24.8 minutes per game, so 9.5 points per game, and then 7.9 rebounds per game. And then 0.7 assists. So a 9.5 and 7.9, that's pretty decent rebounds per game for college. He's a 2024-25 McDonald's All-American, so that's really impressive. I believe he'll be going to the G League, Maine Celtics. But we didn't expect Hugo Gonzalez, right, to be able to be a factor. So I mean, never say never with Chris Sanak having a role on this team this coming season. So we'll see, but we'll see how Chris Sanak, how much he'll play for the Boston Celtics. And then the second player we got was we took brief as I pull it up here for you guys. We took Dylan Mitchell, as I mentioned, out of St. John's. His stats at St. John's, he was in college for 4 years. He was pretty, he was decent. Just 8.3 points per game and 7 rebounds per game for Dylan Mitchell. So yes. He also was at Cincy, Texas for 2 years. So, his Field goal percentage was 599, so that's pretty decent. He was 2021-2022 McDonald's All-American. He's 22 years old, so, and he's 6'8". So I believe that, um, you know, he'll be able to. Hopefully, he can. He had bridged about 28.1 minutes per game for St. John's. So that's a pretty decent amount of minutes in college. So we'll see how well he does. How well Jill Mitchell does for the G League Celtics. Like I said, we didn't expect Hugo to play a role in the Boston Celtics last season. In Kristanak and Dylan Mitchell might actually have a big role for this team next season. We'll just see how it plays out. So that's the 2 draft picks we added. Then as I went through the major trade that we did. So thank you all for about an hour and a half coming up here, or 20 minutes. Thank you guys for all tuning in. And I think that's where I'm going to leave it. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning into the first live stream. It means a lot to have your support, the family support, and have friends, watching and stuff. Definitely going to be doing another live soon. Stay tuned for that announced date. That's going to be coming live next couple weeks. Have a great 4th of July, everybody. And yeah, I think that's where I'll leave it there. Thank you, guys.